In the heart of Cedar Grove, a welcoming little town nestled in the valley of rolling hills and surrounded by extensive fields dressed in the multicolored tapestry of the seasons, lived Jake. At only 11 years old, Jake possessed an old soul, burdened by life's circumstances, yet his eyes still shone with the innocence and vast dreams of a boy. The town, known for its tight-knit community and landscapes that seemed like living paintings, was both a comforting home and a stage for Jake's daily struggle. The awakening of Cedar Grove was marked by the singing of birds and the whispering of leaves, brought by the morning breeze that traversed the still empty streets. But for Jake, dawn didn't bring the leisure of contemplating the beauty of his town. For him, each new day was a race against time, an effort to contribute to his family's livelihood. Even before the first rays of sun tinted the sky orange and pink, Jake was already up and about with his carefully organized box of sweets hanging on his shoulder. Wearing a shirt already faded from use and pants slightly short for his stature due to the rapid growth typical of his age, he took his quick and decisive steps towards the busiest traffic lights in town, where he would spend the next few hours working. Mornings in Cedar Grove were cold, especially in the transitional months, when the dew still covered the ground until bathed by the sun. Jake, feeling the morning chill seeping into his clothes, adjusted the strap of the box on his shoulder, trying to find a more comfortable position for the long day ahead. He knew every stone along the way, every curve that led him to his daily destination. His heart, though heavy with the responsibility of contributing to his mother's and his own livelihood, beat with the hope of a better day, of a future where the need to sell sweets at traffic lights would be just a distant memory. Arriving at his usual spot, a bustling intersection where people hurried past in their cars on their way to work, Jake prepared his box with an efficiency that only constant practice could provide. He arranged the sweets in neat rows, each with its vibrant color promising a brief moment of sweetness amidst the rush of everyday life. Jake watched the cars, trying to guess who might be interested in buying his sweets, his gaze alternating between hurried faces and curious glances. Each sale was a small victory. Each smile received while delivering a sweet treat was like a sunbeam brightening his spirit. Jake wasn't just selling candies. He was selling moments of joy, a human connection amidst the monotony of daily routines. And in each interaction with every coin received, he saw the possibility of a future where he and his mother wouldn't have to worry about bills at the end of the month anymore, where he could go back to just being a boy, living the dreams that shimmered in his eyes. Jake and Elizabeth's residence quietly rested at the end of a peaceful street in Cedar Grove, a small haven of modest simplicity surrounded by neighbors who shared a sense of community, though their lives rarely intertwined. The facade of the house, weathered by time and the elements, told tales of better years, before adversities piled up like clouds in a once clear sky. The front garden, though small, was a constant battleground against stubborn weeds that insisted on asserting their place among the few resilient flowers Elizabeth managed to cultivate, in an attempt to bring beauty and life to the environment they called home. Inside the house, the kitchen stood out as the vibrant heart of this small universe. It was a welcoming space, albeit marked by the simplicity of its furniture and the absence of those little luxuries many took for granted. The walls, adorned with drawings made by Jake in his younger years, reflected the love and unity that defined the essence of his relationship with Elizabeth. It was in this room, illuminated by a window framing the sunrise, that Elizabeth spent her mornings preparing coffee while the soft light of dawn gently seeped in, bathing everything in a faint hope of new beginnings. Elizabeth, with her ever-serene demeanor in the face of challenges, moved through the kitchen with a tired grace, her skilled hands preparing coffee with an attention that transcended the simplicity of the task. Her dark circles, silent witnesses of sleepless nights and worries that haunted her, contrasted with the gentle beauty of her face, which, though marked by illness and financial difficulties, still retained traces of the woman who once lived without such burdens. To Jake, she was more than his mother. She was his beacon of strength and determination, living proof that it's possible to weather storms with one's head held high. On a particularly quiet morning, while the dawn fog still embraced the house, Elizabeth turned to Jake with a gentle yet meaningful smile. "Never forget, Jake," she began, her voice low and steady, cutting through the silence of the kitchen with the precision of an undeniable truth. True courage lies in facing our fears, not in never having them. These words, spoken with the sincerity of one who intimately knew life's battles, echoed in Jake's mind like a mantra, a constant reminder that valor did not reside in the absence of fear, but in the willingness to confront it, to move forward despite uncertainties and challenges. Jake, absorbing every word, every gesture from his mother, learned more than lessons about courage and resilience. He learned about unconditional love, about the beauty found in the simplicity of their daily lives. The kitchen, with its scent of freshly brewed coffee and the soft sound of Elizabeth's voice, became for him a sanctuary of learning and growth, a space where, despite the shadows that sometimes loomed, the light of hope and love always found a way to shine. In the small town of Cedar Grove, Elizabeth stood out from a young age for her exceptional piano skills. Her hands glided over the keys with a grace and emotion that transcended mere note execution, turning them into pure artistic expression. She was the heart of local performances, able to capture the attention and hearts of all who heard her. For Elizabeth, music was more than a hobby. It was the essence of her soul, the language through which she navigated the complex tides of her emotions, sharing her deepest joys, sorrows, and hopes. In her youth, filled with dreams and ambitions, Elizabeth envisioned a bright future for herself, a path that would lead her to study at a prestigious music university, where she would refine her talent and eventually become a renowned professional pianist. Life in Cedar Grove was tranquil, but Elizabeth always felt there was a whole world out there waiting for her, a larger stage where her music could truly flourish. She spent hours on end practicing, each note a promise for the future, each melody a step closer to her dreams. Her parents, always her staunchest supporters, encouraged her to pursue her passions, firmly believing in the bright future that awaited her. However, fate had a different path in store for Elizabeth. Her life was abruptly diverted from her dreamed course when a tragic car accident claimed the lives of her parents, leaving her alone and adrift in a world that suddenly seemed vast and intimidating. Still young and now without the support and guidance of her parents, Elizabeth found herself drifting, forced to confront the harsh reality that her dreams would need to be put on hold, perhaps indefinitely. At this critical moment, survival became her priority. Plans to study music at a prestigious university were swallowed by the immediate demands of life. Elizabeth found herself taking any job she could find, each one further from her passion for music than the last. She worked as a cashier in a convenience store, a waitress in a local cafe, and even in small offices, where the monotony of daily work painfully contrasted with the freedom and expression she found in music. This drastic change, of course, was accompanied by a profound sense of loss, not only of the family she loved, but also of the identity that music provided her. Elizabeth struggled to recognize herself in this new life, each day a reminder of what could have been. Despite this, she never stopped playing the piano, even if only alone at night, when the world around her fell silent. These solitary moments at the piano became her refuge, a sacred space where she could reconnect with who she truly was, and with the dreams she refused to completely abandon. Elizabeth's life before Jake's birth was a vivid contrast between what was and what could have been. She lived in an emotional limbo, trapped between the reality of her circumstances and the glow of a future that never came. However, music remained her beacon of hope, the sweet melody that reminded her that even in the darkest nights, there is always a song waiting to be played. During those days of turbulence and uncertainty, when Elizabeth struggled to find new meaning and direction for her life, an unexpected encounter promised to bring a spark of light to the darkness that had settled in her heart. In one of the rare moments when she allowed herself a respite from the daily struggle, she crossed paths with who would become Jake's father in a small local bookstore, one of those welcoming places that seemed to suspend time and the worries of the outside world. The conversation started casually, both reaching for the same book, a collection of classical sheet music that Elizabeth couldn't afford to buy, but whose content she desperately wished to explore. "It seems we have similar musical tastes," he commented with a smile. a smile that Elizabeth found surprisingly comforting. This chance encounter blossomed into a relationship full of promises and shared dreams. For a brief period, Elizabeth allowed herself to believe again in the possibility of happiness and personal fulfillment. Jake's birth was the pinnacle of this newfound joy. Elizabeth would never forget the moment she held Jake in her arms for the first time, his little face a perfect blend of hers and his father's features. The baby brought new purpose and determination to her life, brightening the darkest days with his innocent smile and contagious laughter. Jake was, in every sense, the ray of sunshine that broke through the clouds of despair that had gathered over Elizabeth. However, like shadows briefly yielding to light only to return denser, Elizabeth's happiness proved ephemeral. A few years after Jake's birth, when life seemed to finally be finding a delicate balance, Jake's father, under the weight of responsibilities he claimed he couldn't bear, made the choice to leave them. The departure was abrupt, a devastating blow to Elizabeth, who found herself once again immersed in a sea of uncertainties, this time with the additional responsibility of raising a child alone. The pain of betrayal and abandonment was a deep wound for Elizabeth, who struggled to comprehend how the man she loved, who had shared dreams of a life together with her, could turn his back on his own family. How could he? She wondered on sleepless nights, staring at the ceiling while Jake slept peacefully in the room next door, oblivious to his mother's struggles. The question echoed in her mind, unanswered, a constant reminder of the fragility of the happiness she had so briefly experienced. In this period of pain and readjustment, Elizabeth discovered a strength she didn't know she possessed. For Jake, she rebuilt her life piece by piece, facing each new challenge with fierce determination. She became, out of necessity, an unshakable rock upon which Jake could lean, even as life's storms threatened to topple them. Elizabeth vowed to herself that no matter what happened, Jake would never feel abandoned, a promise that became the gravitational center of her existence. During those dark and uncertain days, Elizabeth faced an internal battle that tested the limits of her resilience and strength. The early signs were subtle, almost imperceptible, a persistent feeling of fatigue that accompanied her from the moment she woke up until the moment she, exhausted, lay down at night hoping for some rest. Initially, she tried to explain these symptoms as a natural result of her hectic lifestyle, a direct consequence of long hours of work and sleepless nights worrying about finances and Jake's well-being. "It's just tiredness," she murmured to herself, trying to ignore the little voice whispering that something more serious might be behind that constant fatigue. As time passed, new symptoms began to manifest, each more alarming than the last. Sharp and persistent pains invaded her body without warning, taking her breath away and doubling her in discomfort. Elizabeth tried to maintain a facade of normality in front of Jake, but the pain was a constant shadow, a cruel reminder that something seriously wrong was happening with her body. Confronted with the reality of her debilitating physical condition and the limited resources she had, Elizabeth hesitated to seek medical help. The fear of the financial cost associated with consultations and treatments was paralyzing. "How am I going to pay for this?" she wondered, her heart squeezed by the anguish of having to choose between her health and the basic needs of her child. Concern for Jake, the tangible fear of not being able to care for him, became the catalyst that propelled her to act, despite her reservations. It was with a mixture of determination and fear that Elizabeth finally scheduled an appointment with a general practitioner, a step fraught with anxiety and hope. Sitting in the waiting room, her hands intertwined in her lap in an attempt to control her nervousness, she mentally reviewed all the possible explanations for her symptoms, each more terrifying than the last. When the diagnosis came, a chronic condition that would require ongoing treatment and possibly surgery, Elizabeth's world seemed to collapse under the weight of those words. The news of the diagnosis was a devastating blow to Elizabeth, throwing her into a whirlwind of emotions. How am I going to face this? She wondered, the fear of an uncertain future consuming her thoughts. Concern for Jake was the most painful of all. He was her light, her reason to fight, but how could she be the mother he deserved if her own health was failing? Sleepless nights became routine as Elizabeth lay awake, staring at the ceiling shrouded in darkness, haunted by the fear of the unknown. Every silent night while Jake slept in the room next door, oblivious to his mother's battles, Elizabeth found herself in a solitary struggle against her own thoughts, each one more terrifying than the last. "I need to be strong for him," she repeated to herself, a mantra in the darkness, seeking somewhere within herself the strength to face what was to come. For Jake, for the promise of better days that she refused to let slip away. Before the veil of adversity was cast upon the family due to Elizabeth's illness, Jake lived immersed in a world where financial difficulties were softened by the unconditional love and constant attention of his mother. Life in Cedar Grove, although marked by simplicity and the daily struggle for survival, was rich in moments of genuine happiness and shared learning. Elizabeth, with her wisdom and tenderness, tirelessly strove to create an environment where Jake could grow without feeling the weight of the worries she silently carried on her shoulders. Every night, before Jake surrendered to sleep, Elizabeth dedicated a special moment to feed her son's fertile imagination. She read him stories that transcended the reality of their lives, tales of adventures in distant lands and brave heroes facing unimaginable challenges. These moments were sacred, a profound connection between mother and son, where the hardships of daily life were set aside, and only the magic of words mattered. "Mommy, can we live in one of these stories one day?" Jake would ask, his eyes sparkling with the reflection of the fantastic worlds that only imagination can create. "In our hearts we already do, my love," Elizabeth would respond with a smile, planting in him the seed of love for books and knowledge, a legacy she hoped he would carry throughout his life. Jake, with his insatiable curiosity and keen intelligence, was a natural explorer of the world around him. He found joy in the simplest things, a sunbeam penetrating the leaves of trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the path to school, or the smell of a new book, its pages still untouched, promising adventures and secrets to be discovered. Despite his tender age, Jake was perceptible to his mother's situation's reality, and this only increased his gratitude for her efforts to provide moments of joy and normalcy in his life. It was on one of those rare sunny spring days when the city park filled with colors and life that the friendship between Jake and Ava took shape. Jake, at 7 years old and with the typical determination of childhood, stretched himself out trying to reach a book that seemed to call to him from the top shelf of the mobile library, a vehicle full of stories that visited the park once a week. Ava, a girl of the same age with a vibrant presence and an adventurous spirit, watched the scene a few steps away. Moved by a sense of camaraderie, she approached, her slightly taller stature allowing her to easily grab the book. "This is one of my favorites," Ava declared, handing the book to Jake with a smile that lit up her face. "Adventure stories are the best, don't you think?" Jake, initially shy from the unexpected approach, immediately felt at ease with Ava's contagious enthusiasm. "Yes, I love stories like that, but this book I've never read it," he admitted, accepting the book and allowing himself to be swept away by the curiosity and mutual interest that instantly connected them. From that fortuitous encounter, a deep and lasting friendship blossomed, rooted in the shared love for stories that spoke of worlds beyond Cedar Grove's small reality. Ava became more than just a friend to Jake. She was his adventure companion, both within the pages of books and in explorations through the park and the town. Together, they embarked on imaginary journeys, uncovering hidden treasures in every story and in every corner of their world. This friendship became a safe haven for Jake, a space where he could dream freely and forget, even if just for a moment, the shadows beginning to form over his family life. Ava, with her background in a family of modest financial stability, lived in a home where love and support were never lacking. Her house was a reflection of a simple yet comfortable life, filled with small luxuries that made all the difference in daily living. Her parents, always supportive and understanding, fostered an environment where curiosity and a passion for knowledge were not only encouraged, but celebrated. Socioeconomic differences aside, the friendship between Ava and Jake flourished based on common interests and a deep emotional connection, transcending any material barriers that might exist between them. The Cedar Grove Municipal Library became one of their favorite haunts, a sanctuary of tranquility and adventure where both could immerse themselves in worlds created by authors from every corner of the globe. The old building, with its shelves brimming with books and the characteristic scent of old paper, was the perfect stage for their intellectual explorations. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to sail the seas with pirates or discover unknown lands? Ava would ask, excitement gleaming in her eyes as she flipped through the pages of an adventure book. Jake, always ready to embark on another imaginary journey, would respond with an equally enthusiastic smile. With you by my side, I think we could face anything. The city park, another frequent setting for their adventures, was a vast natural playground where Ava and Jake's imagination knew no bounds. Surrounded by the beauty of nature, with trees reaching towards the sky and evergreen grass inviting rest and play, they recreated the stories they read, becoming the main characters of their own epic narratives. This could be the enchanted forest we read about yesterday, Ava would suggest, pointing to a shaded corner of the park, her eyes dancing with possibilities. And that old oak could be our secret meeting spot, Jake would add, joining in the game with enthusiasm. The relationship between Ava and Jake was a testimony to the power of true friendship, a connection that transcended life circumstances, rooted in mutual understanding and respect. Ava saw Jake not as a reflection of her financial situation, but as the valuable, intelligent, and imaginative friend he was. She was to Jake a constant in his life, a presence that brought him comfort and joy in the toughest times. Together, they proved that even amidst adversity, it's possible to find space to dream, learn, and grow. You know, Ava, Jake would say during one of their many meetings at the library, his voice low in a moment of reflection, you make me forget all the bad things out there. Ava, setting aside the book she was reading, would turn to him with a gentle and reassuring smile. And you remind me, Jake, that the best adventures in life are the ones we share with friends. This exchange, simple in its words, but deep in its meaning, sealed the unspoken promise that regardless of what the future held, they would face it together, with the strength of their friendship guiding them through any storm. As Elizabeth's health deteriorated, the shadow of her illness loomed larger and larger over the family's daily life, turning once simple routines into exhausting challenges. Elizabeth, who had always been Jake's strength and foundation, now found herself in a constant battle against fatigue and pain, limitations that kept her from the activities she used to share with her son. These moments, once filled with laughter and learning, became empty spaces in Jake's life, moments he learned to fill with Ava's comforting presence. Ava, noticing the growing absence of Jake's mother in their daily adventures, intuitively took on an even more significant role in her friend's life. She became not only a playmate but a true source of emotional support, someone Jake knew he could rely on to bring some normalcy and joy to his increasingly bleak days. Jake, shall we explore the park today? I heard there's a new bird's nest near the big maple tree, Ava would suggest eagerly, trying to ignite in her friend the same interest in life's little wonders they had always shared. You always know how to cheer me up, Ava, Jake would reply, a shy smile spreading across his face, a reminder of the joy that could still be found even in the toughest moments. Together they embarked on new adventures, each carefully planned by Ava to ensure Jake had moments of escape from the worries that would otherwise consume his young heart. On a particularly tough afternoon when Elizabeth had to rest after an exhausting visit to the doctor, Ava took Jake to an isolated part of the park, a small natural sanctuary where they could sit quietly and talk. Are you okay, Jake? You know you can talk to me about anything, right? Ava asked, her soft voice laden with genuine concern. Jake looked at his friend, his eyes reflecting the turmoil of emotions he struggled to understand and express. It's just that I miss doing things with my mom, but I'm glad you're here, Ava. You make me feel less alone. These conversations became a cornerstone in Jake's life, moments where he could share his fears and sorrows without judgment, finding in Ava an attentive and understanding listener. Their friendship strengthened each day, becoming a beacon of hope and resilience amidst the storm that was Elizabeth's illness. Ava, with her constant presence and unwavering support, showed Jake that even in the face of the most challenging adversities, he would never be alone. Together, Ava and Jake continued to discover the hidden beauty in the most unexpected corners of Cedar Grove, each shared laugh and every moment of joy a defiance against the shadows that tried to obscure their days. Their friendship, rich in mutual understanding and unconditional support, was a testament to the power of human connection in bringing light and color to a world that might otherwise seem gray and devoid of hope. In the early hours of each new day, when the dew still kissed the grass and the sun began its slow ascent on the horizon, Jake was gently awakened by the reality of his purpose. It wasn't obligation dragging him out of bed, but a deep and immeasurable love. A love for Elizabeth, his mother, who had set aside her own aspirations, dreams, and desires to ensure he had a better life. This understanding weighed on his young heart, a mixture of gratitude and determination that propelled him to face each day with courage. Positioned at the busy corner where the traffic light regulated the constant flow of cars and hurried people, Jake found himself amidst a daily struggle that transcended mere candy sales. It was a battle against discouragement, against glances ranging from thinly veiled pity to outright disdain. Some passers-by cast sympathetic looks his way, while others averted their gaze, disturbed by the reminder that there were children forced to grow up too soon in the world. Nevertheless, Jake faced each day armed not with resentment, but with a smile that served as his armor against adversity. The innocence of his age shone in his eyes, a flame refusing to be extinguished by the circumstances of his life. Every candy sold, every coin received, was not just a transaction. It was an act of resistance, a small step towards the security and stability he wished to provide back to his mother. "For the salvation of our little world," he murmured to himself. A silent promise that despite the obstacles he would do everything in his power to take care of Elizabeth, just as she had always taken care of him. This determination was visible to all who truly stopped to see him, not as just another child working the streets, but as a young man with an unbreakable will. On one of these days, as Jake carefully counted the coins earned so far, an elderly gentleman approached. He had been observing Jake from afar, touched by the boy's perseverance. "You're a warrior, you know," the man said, his voice choked with emotion. Jake looked at him, surprised by the interruption and the unexpected praise. "I'm just trying to help my mom," Jake replied simply. "That, my young friend, is the mark of a true hero," replied the gentleman, a gleam of admiration in his eyes. "Keep fighting, keep smiling. The world needs more hearts like yours." And with those words, he bought some candies, leaving Jake not only with the money but also with a little more hope and the confirmation that his daily battles did not go unnoticed. This encounter, brief but significant, reinforced in Jake the idea that his actions had value, that his struggle was not in vain. He went on with the rest of the day with renewed vigor, reminded that although the world around him might be indifferent and even cruel, there were moments of kindness and recognition that shone like beacons in the night, guiding him through the darkness. For Jake, school seemed more like an abstract concept than a part of his daily reality. He lived in a world where formal education was replaced by life lessons learned on the streets and through the stories Ava shared with him. While other children his age gathered in classrooms, absorbing knowledge from teachers and textbooks, Jake sold candies at traffic lights, learning about the world in a very different way. However, within him burned a curiosity and a deep desire to explore this alternative universe of knowledge and discoveries. Ava, with her generous nature and adventurous spirit, became the bridge between Jake and the vast world of formal education he so eagerly longed to know. With her brown hair often in disarray, as if she were always running from one adventure to another, and a smile that rarely left her face, she was the embodiment of hope for Jake. Ava made it a point to bring him school books, telling him about the wonders of science classes, the puzzles presented in math classes, and the fascinating stories she learned in history and literature. Sometimes they would sit together in the park, under the welcoming shade of an old tree, while Ava patiently explained mathematical concepts to Jake, using pebbles and branches to illustrate problems and solutions. "Hey Jake, look at how you can visualize this problem," Ava said, her contagious enthusiasm evident as she arranged pebbles on the ground to represent a mathematical equation. Jake, watching closely, felt gradually absorbed by the fascination of numbers and patterns, a new world unfolding before his eyes thanks to Ava's patience and dedication. "Do you believe that one day I'll be able to be there too, Ava? In school, learning like everyone else?" Jake would occasionally ask, a hint of uncertainty in his voice, reflecting the fear that this dream might remain out of his reach. "Of course you will, Jake. You're smarter than many of them," Ava replied, her voice full of conviction and unwavering optimism. "One day things will change, you'll see. You'll go back to school and I'll be there in the front row cheering you on." Her words were a balm to Jake's doubts, reigniting the flame of hope that sometimes seemed to flicker within him. These impromptu study sessions in the park, or while resting on one of the benches, surrounded by reassuring greenery and the distant hum of children playing, became precious moments for Jake. They were instants that transcended the reality of his circumstances, moments when he could dream of a different future, a future where school and learning would be part of his daily life. Ava, through her friendship and unwavering support, became more than a friend. She was the promise that, regardless of the obstacles, there was always a possibility of change and growth. Together, they navigated the uncertain currents of life, anchored by the strength of their friendship and the shared certainty that, no matter how difficult the journey, they would face it together, always side by side. On an unexpectedly warm afternoon for that time of year, Jake made his way back home, his mind occupied with the usual thoughts of a day filled with small sales and fleeting interactions. It was then that his casual gaze caught a sight that immediately froze his steps and quickened his heart. His mother, Elizabeth, a figure always marked by simplicity and modesty in her manner of dress, was now adorned in surprisingly elegant attire, her clothes reflecting a glow and sophistication that Jake would never associate with the woman he knew so intimately. The contrast was so striking that for a moment he doubted his own eyes. Elizabeth gracefully climbed into a luxury car parked in front of their modest residence, a scene so out of the ordinary that it stirred a whirlwind of emotions in Jake. Confusion, fear, and a curiosity that could not be contained. Moved by a mixture of fear and fascination, Jake decided to follow the vehicle, hiding in the shadows and moving with the caution of an amateur detective, much like the characters in the mystery stories Ava loved to read to him. His small feet barely touched the ground, propelled by the need to unravel the mystery unfolding before his eyes. The car didn't take long to reach its destination, parking in front of the city's grand auditorium, an imposing structure that dominated the local landscape with its grand architecture and an aura of importance that Jake only knew from accounts. The boy never imagined he would have a reason to approach that place, much less under such unusual circumstances. Watching from a distance, his heart beat at a frenetic pace, each thud echoing his growing concerns and the anxiety filling him. With hesitant but determined steps, Jake approached the auditorium, finding refuge in a discreet corner from where he could observe the main entrance. His mother walked with a confidence he rarely saw her display, her posture erect and her gaze fixed ahead as if she were about to face a challenge of enormous proportions. For a moment, Jake barely recognized her. The woman entering the auditorium carried an aura of determination and courage that starkly contrasted with the tired and worried figure he was accustomed to seeing at home. Curiosity and concern wrestled within Jake as he watched the scene unfold before his eyes. The idea of his mother, a woman whose life revolved around sacrifices and caring for him, getting involved in an event so outside her daily routine seemed as strange as it was intriguing. What could have led Elizabeth to venture so far from her comfort zone? And more importantly, what did that night hold for both mother and son, whose lives were about to be changed in ways neither of them could foresee? Jake, hidden in his improvised hiding spot, felt the weight of that moment, a mixture of pride and concern flooding his chest as he watched his mother take the stage of real life with the same bravery as the heroes of the stories he loved so much. In that instant, he understood that regardless of what was to come, their journey together would take a new direction, marked by revelations and challenges that would test the bonds that united them. On that memorable night, as Elizabeth walked towards the grand piano positioned at the center of the stage, An expectant silence embraced the auditorium. The softly focused lights upon her seemed to highlight not only Elizabeth's physical figure, but also the aura of determination surrounding her. Her simple yet elegant dress rippled with each step, marking the rhythm of a new page in her story. When her hands finally rested upon the black and white keys, a shiver of anticipation ran through the audience. The initial notes, though hesitant and trembling, cut through the silence with the gentleness and vulnerability of an intimate confession. Jake, lurking from the shadows, held his breath, his wide eyes fixed on his mother's figure. That woman, whose existence he had always associated with the exhausting routine of daily survival, revealed herself in a new light. Under the spotlight, Elizabeth was not just a mother or a tireless fighter against adversity. She was music, passion, the embodiment of long-muted dreams. As the music flowed, gaining strength and beauty, a miracle unfolded before everyone's eyes. Elizabeth's transformation on stage was more than a performance. It was a revelation. With each chord, each melody, she narrated a saga of struggles, of dreams put on hold, of a silent strength that, until that moment, had remained veiled beneath the cloak of everyday life. The notes emanating from the piano told stories that transcended words, stories of a life marked by sacrifices and unconditional love. A life that Jake only superficially knew, through the visible concerns on his mother's tired face, but which at that moment unfolded in its emotional complexity before his eyes. For Jake, that performance was a window into his mother's soul, an insight into the depth of her feelings and desires. It was as if, for the first time, he truly saw Elizabeth not only as his caregiver, but as a woman with her own dreams and passions. The music, flowing freely and powerfully under her skillful fingers, was a testimony to the Elizabeth who existed before him, the young woman full of artistic aspirations who had somehow gotten lost along the way. In that auditorium, there wasn't a single spectator who didn't feel touched by the raw and genuine emotion of that performance. Elizabeth, with her magnetic presence and complete dedication to the music, won over the hearts of everyone. And Jake, even hidden in the shadows, felt immense pride and renewed admiration for his mother. She had faced her fears, embraced her passion, and for a few magical moments, freed herself from the chains of her harsh reality. That event not only changed Jake's perception of his mother, but also strengthened the unbreakable bond between them, a bond fueled by a new mutual understanding and even greater respect for the silent battles Elizabeth had faced alone. In a moment that seemed to suspend time within the grand auditorium, Elizabeth's performance was suddenly marked by an unexpected slip. The keys, previously accomplices to a fluent and touching melodic narrative, betrayed her with a dissonant chord that cut through the air and shattered the meticulously built harmony. The music, flowing like a serene river, encountered an obstacle, diverting its course and leaving a deafening silence in its wake. The entire auditorium held its breath, immersed in a palpable tension thickening the air. In that critical instant, Elizabeth seemed to shrink under the weight of the mistake, a momentary vulnerability that made her seem small against the vastness of the stage. Her eyes, normally full of serene confidence, now frantically searched the darkness beyond the spotlight, seeking something or someone to be her beacon in the sudden storm of doubts that assailed her. It was then, in that exact moment of hesitation and uncertainty, that Jake, driven by an impulse that transcended the fear of being discovered, found within himself a courage he had not known before. Rising from the shadows that concealed him, his voice, though laden with nervousness, resonated through the space with a clarity and conviction that seemed to defy the magnitude of the auditorium. "You can do it, Mom." This cry of encouragement, simple in its form, but immense in its meaning, acted as the breath of life Elizabeth needed. It was more than just encouragement. It was an invisible bridge of love and unconditional support connecting mother and son. A reminder that no matter how difficult the battle, she was not alone. Inspired by Jake's words, Elizabeth found the strength within herself to rise from adversity. With her fingers once again dancing across the piano keys, each ensuing note was imbued with raw emotion and renewed purpose. The music was reborn, transformed, no longer just a sequence of chords and melodies, but a testament to human resilience, the ability to overcome moments of failure and emerge even stronger. The atmosphere of the auditorium shifted, as if the vibrant energy of Elizabeth's music invoked an electric current that connected every person present. The audience, once immersed in silent anticipation, now found themselves captivated, drawn into the emotional journey that Elizabeth shared through her art. Every movement, every facial expression accompanying the fluidity of her performance was an open window to her soul, allowing everyone to glimpse the passion and dream that propelled her. In this new beginning, Elizabeth was no longer alone on stage. She was accompanied by every heart beating in unison in the auditorium, united by the music that spoke of struggles, overcoming, and the unyielding will to move forward. And at the center of this invisible bond of understanding and mutual admiration was Jake, whose simple yet profoundly significant act of courage had been the catalyst for a moment that would be etched in everyone's memory as a reminder of the transformative power of love and support. At the end of that transformative performance, a wave of applause flooded the auditorium, a storm of recognition and admiration for the woman who, with her music, had touched every heart present. The applause resounded not only through the walls of the grand hall, but also within Elizabeth's heart, who remained under the spotlight, no longer a figure diminished by hesitation, but the living embodiment of resilience and reignited passion. The warmth of the applause enveloped her, each beat synchronized with the racing of her accelerated heart, a symphony of gratitude for the journey she had just shared. But for Jake, still hidden in the shadows and observing the scene with eyes shining with admiration and pride, the true essence of that victory was not found in the resounding recognition of the audience. No, for him, the victory was crystallized in his mother's gaze, a gaze brimming with fulfillment and deep happiness, so radiant that it seemed to illuminate the stage more intensely than any spotlight. In that gaze, Jake saw not only the mother he had always known, but also the woman, the artist whose indomitable spirit had finally been set free. The silent connection between mother and son in that moment transcended any words. Jake knew that something fundamental had shifted at the core of his being, a change so profound and irrevocable that it would redefine the course of their lives. The pride he felt for Elizabeth, for her courage to expose herself, to embrace her passion and face her fears in front of a crowd of strangers and emerge triumphant, was an overwhelming feeling. As the auditorium continued to celebrate Elizabeth's spectacular performance, Jake slowly emerged from his hiding place, driven by an impulse to draw near, to be closer to his mother in this moment of triumph. With the final applause echoing through the hall, he approached the stage, his heart beating in unison with the remnants of that ovation. "Mom," he called softly, his voice filled with emotion and admiration. Elizabeth, upon hearing her son's voice, turned, her eyes meeting his amidst the dispersing crowd. The smile they shared in that moment was an invisible bond, a bridge connecting their souls. Words were unnecessary. Their gazes spoke volumes about unconditional love, mutual respect, and the pride that flowed freely between them. Amidst the bustling backstage of the grand auditorium, after the conclusion of that performance which had captured the hearts of all present, Elizabeth walked with trembling steps, still under the influence of the adrenaline and emotion that the music had stirred within her. The air was thick with a mix of euphoric voices, distant applause still echoing from the main stage, and the muffled sound of enthusiastic conversations. Participants and spectators intertwined in a chaotic dance of congratulations and effusive comments, creating a vibrant atmosphere that contrasted with the exhaustion and ecstasy Elizabeth felt within. It was in this post-show chaos that Dr. Lewis, one of the judges whose reputation preceded him, approached Elizabeth with the gentleness of someone who understood the weight of the moment he had just witnessed. His approach, though respectful, couldn't help but surprise Elizabeth, who was still emotionally recovering from her exposure on stage. "Elizabeth, allow me to express how touching your performance was tonight," Dr. Lewis began, his voice laden with palpable sincerity and a warmth that immediately disarmed any barriers Elizabeth might have erected. "The technique was impeccable, yes, but it was the purity of emotion you conveyed, the truth that flowed from your soul through the music, that truly resonated with us. Faced with this recognition, Elizabeth felt a whirlwind of emotions. The initial surprise at the praise gave way to a feeling of vulnerability as she realized that her emotional journey, intertwined with the note she had played, had been laid bare for all to see. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice trembling, revealing how deeply those words had affected her. "This music, it represents me in so many ways. Playing it here in front of everyone was like rediscovering a part of myself I thought had been lost long ago." Dr. Lewis, sensing the depth of the moment for Elizabeth, proceeded with an offer as generous as it was unexpected. "Your story is inspiring, Elizabeth, and the courage to share it with us deserves more than just words of appreciation. I would like to offer my assistance in any way possible. The world needs more music like yours, and stories of overcoming like yours." Filled with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief, Elizabeth struggled to find the right words. Dr. Lewis's offer was not just a recognition of her performance, but also a ray of hope, a sign that perhaps there was a path forward, not only for her to reignite her passion for music, but also to offer a better future for Jake. "I genuinely don't know how to thank you," she said, her eyes misty with emotion. "This means more to me and my son than you can imagine. Your generosity is an unexpected gift." In this exchange of sincerity and support, Elizabeth and Dr. Lewis shared more than just words. There was a mutual acknowledgement of the transformative power of art and music, and a tacit understanding that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected sources. For Elizabeth, this conversation not only sealed the closure of a memorable night, but also opened the doors to a new chapter in her life, one filled with possibilities and promises of renewal. As Dr. Lewis approached Elizabeth, there was a depth in his eyes that transcended the formality of the gesture he was about to make. "Elizabeth," he began, with a voice carrying the weight of empathy and understanding, "my life has been dedicated to the science of healing, to treating ailments that afflict the body. But what I witnessed tonight was a powerful reminder that healing goes beyond the physical. Your music, your expression, touched something much deeper, much more essential in all of us. It touched our souls." Elizabeth, still wrapped in the veil of emotions her performance and the subsequent reception had evoked, listened attentively, each word of Dr. Lewis echoing in her heart. "Your art and your story," he continued, "speak of a journey of overcoming, of a resilience that deserves to be recognized and supported, not just as a mere gesture of charity, but as an investment in the beauty and strength of the human spirit that you so clearly embody." As he presented the check, Dr. Lewis made sure to clarify the dual purpose of his generous act. "This check is not only to assist with the treatment you need," he explained, looking directly into Elizabeth's eyes, seeking to convey all the sincerity of his intentions. "It is also an investment in Jake's future. It's to ensure that he has the educational opportunities that every young person deserves, opportunities that I know you dream of providing for him." For Elizabeth, Dr. Lewis's words and the gesture that accompanied them represented much more than immediate financial assistance. It was the materialization of a dream she had nurtured carefully, almost daring to believe that it could one day come true. "Dr. Lewis," she began, her voice choked with emotion, "I can't find words to express how much this means to me, to us. You're not just helping alleviate my worries about Jake's health and education. You're giving us hope. You're giving us a future." At that moment, as they shared a mutual understanding of the invaluable value of support and compassion, Elizabeth and Dr. Lewis were cementing a rare bond based on the recognition of the power of art, music, in bringing about real and positive changes in people's lives. For Elizabeth, the check symbolized the possibility of a fresh start, not only in her battle against her illness, but in the journey to provide Jake with the education and opportunities she had always wished for him. In the days following Dr. Lewis's unexpected generosity, the atmosphere in Jake and Elizabeth's home was laden with renewed optimism, a feeling almost forgotten amidst the adversities they had faced. The sudden financial turnaround opened doors that had seemed firmly shut until then, bringing a wave of relief and hope that deeply transformed the dynamics of their lives. Elizabeth, whose health had been a constant source of concern and limitation, found herself with the opportunity to seek necessary medical treatment without the specter of financial instability looming over her decisions. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel a kind of tranquility, relieved by the prospect of taking care of her health without sacrificing other basic needs. The possibility of recovery and the promise of better days not only gave her strength to face treatment, but also reignited in her heart the hope for a more promising future for her and her son. For Jake, the change was equally significant, though tinged with nervousness and excitement. The prospect of returning to school, an environment from which he had been forcibly distanced, was both intimidating and thrilling. Knowledge, which he had always valued even in the most challenging circumstances, was now within his reach, promising to open up a world of possibilities that had once seemed mere fantasies. "Do you think I'll fit in, Mom?" he asked one evening as they prepared dinner together in the kitchen. "It's been so long since I've been in a classroom." Elizabeth, turning to face her son, smiled affectionately and confidently. "Jake, you're the smartest and bravest boy I know. You will not only fit in, but you will shine, and I'll be here rooting for you every step of the way," she replied, reinforcing the bond of unconditional support that had always defined their relationship. Ava's support was also a crucial component in this new phase. She, who had been Jake's window to the world of education during his absence, now became an even more important ally, helping him navigate the challenges of reintegrating into school. "Let's review the school material together," Ava suggested, dedicating afternoons after classes to help Jake catch up. "And you'll tell me all about the day's adventures, deal?" The small community of Cedar Grove, with its quiet streets and welcoming homes, had watched Jake grow in a way that few places allow. From the days when he, with his candy box, became a familiar figure on the corners, to the moment when, thanks to Dr. Lewis's unexpected generosity, his life took a decisive turn. Now, returning to school, Jake had become the center of gentle curiosity and sincere admiration from everyone who comprised his world. Teachers, classmates, and acquaintances. Jake's teachers, many of whom only knew his story through whispers in the hallways or conversations in the teacher's lounge, welcomed him not only as a student but as a symbol of resilience and hope. "Welcome back, Jake. Your presence brings a new light to our classroom," said one of his teachers on the first day of school, a warm smile on their face. They marveled at the depth of his determination, recognizing in him a strength that transcended mere academic achievement. They were committed to supporting him, offering additional resources and individualized attention to ensure that his transition back to school life was as smooth as possible. His classmates, many of whom remembered Jake as the candy-selling boy, now saw him in a new light. The initial curiosity quickly gave way to genuine admiration as they began to understand the magnitude of the challenges he had faced and overcome. "Dude, you're amazing. I don't know if I could do what you did," remarked a classmate during recess, a gesture of camaraderie that deeply touched Jake. Gradually, he was woven back into the social fabric of the school, his contributions and unique perspectives enriching classroom discussions and leisure moments. Ava, the loyal friend whose support had been invaluable during Jake's toughest moments, was radiant with her friend's progress. "See? I told you things would get better," she reminded him with a bright smile as they walked together through the schoolyard. Her joy was palpable, and she didn't hesitate to share stories of their previous adventures with the new friends Jake was making, punctuating each narrative with reminders of his courage and tenacity. Ava wasn't just a friend. She was the guardian of his memories, the bridge between Jake's past and his transformed present. The transformation in the relationship between Jake and his mother, Elizabeth, after the talent show event and Dr. Lewis's unexpected gesture of generosity, was both subtle and monumental. Music, a previously unexplored bond between mother and son, became the language through which a new understanding and mutual admiration blossomed, revealing facets of their personalities and histories that were previously hidden or underestimated. For Elizabeth, the experience of sharing her long-forgotten passion for music with Jake, and more broadly with an entire audience, redefined her perception of herself and her son. Always seeing herself in the role of protector, the unwavering matriarch dedicated solely to Jake's well-being. She discovered that her son was no longer just someone to be protected. Observing Jake's courage as he encouraged her during her performance and realizing his response to Dr. Lewis's support, Elizabeth saw a new image of Jake emerge, a resilient, inspiring, and courageous young man. "Jake," Elizabeth said one quiet afternoon in their living room, the twilight casting a soft glow around them, "you showed me something incredible that night. Your strength and encouragement were the push I needed. I used to think my music was just a part of my past, but you helped me see that it can be a path to our future." Jake, sitting beside her, listened intently, absorbing every word. The depth of his mother's sacrifices had always been something he acknowledged, but only superficially. Now, understanding the weight of Elizabeth's sacrifices and inner strength, his admiration for her reached new heights. "Mom," he replied, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overflow. "You've always been my greatest hero, even when I didn't fully understand everything you've done for us. Your music, it's not just beautiful, it's powerful. It connects us, and I feel like somehow it will take us to places we never imagined." This conversation, filled with genuine emotions and shared discoveries, sealed a new chapter in both of their lives. Encouraged by Jake's support and the opportunity provided by Dr. Lewis, Elizabeth began to see possibilities beyond the limitations that life had imposed on them. Jake, in turn, inspired by his mother's strength and resilience, felt more determined than ever to pursue his own dreams, armed with the certainty that, regardless of the challenges, they could overcome them together. The relationship between mother and son, enriched by music and the generosity of a stranger, became more than just a partnership in daily survival. It transformed into an alliance of mutual growth, inspiration, and unconditional support. Elizabeth and Jake together faced the future not only with hope, but with the conviction that, regardless of the obstacles, the music they shared, and the love that bound them, would be their indomitable strength against the world. In the mosaic of Jake and Elizabeth's life, made up of pieces of challenges, overcoming, and unwavering love, a new surprising pattern was about to be revealed, adding depth and color to an already rich story. A few months after the talent contest, an unexpected visit from Dr. Lewis opened the door to a chapter they both believed to be permanently closed. On a tranquil afternoon, typical of the serenity that pervaded Cedar Grove, Dr. Lewis arrived at Elizabeth and Jake's modest home. With an expression that mixed anxiety and hope, he was greeted by Elizabeth, whose surprise at seeing him in her home was evident. "Elizabeth, there's something important I need to share with you, something I discovered after our last conversation," Dr. Lewis began, his voice trembling, betraying the magnitude of what he was about to reveal. Invited to sit in the living room, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, Dr. Lewis began to unravel a story that seemed more fitting for the pages of a novel than reality. He recounted a painful separation in childhood, a consequence of the same tragedy that had left Elizabeth orphaned. He revealed how life had taken him through winding paths, always with the latent desire to find the family that had been taken from him so abruptly. And with his voice choked with emotion, Dr. Lewis revealed the surprising truth. He was Elizabeth's older brother, the missing piece in the puzzle of their origins. For Elizabeth, Dr. Lewis's words fell like rain in the desert, reviving hopes long buried under the weight of resignation. The reunion with her lost brother unleashed a torrent of emotions she could barely comprehend, let alone express. Tears flowed freely as tight hugs sealed the end of decades of separation and the healing of old wounds. For Jake, this revelation was like opening a new book, filled with pages waiting to be read. The idea of having an extended family, additional stories to enrich his understanding of who he was and where he came from, was exciting. "Uncle Lewis?" he said timidly, testing out the new title, a sparkle of curiosity and joy in his eyes. "Will you tell me about your adventures? About how you found us?" Dr. Lewis's response was a warm smile, promising many afternoons of conversations and memory sharing. Cedar Grove, the small community that had witnessed Elizabeth and Jake's journey, now found itself in the midst of a family reunion story worthy of the most thrilling tales. The residents celebrated this incredible turn of events, a poignant reminder that life, with its unexpected twists, can sometimes weave happy endings into the most unlikely stories. This reunion, more than just closing a chapter in Elizabeth's life, opened countless doors to the future. For Elizabeth, it meant reclaiming a part of her life she thought was lost forever. For Jake, it represented the expansion of his world, enriching his personal story with new layers of family and belonging. And for Dr. Lewis, it was the fulfillment of an old dream, proof that even after years of searching and separation, destiny could weave paths back home into the arms of a reunited family against all odds. In the small, close-knit community of Cedar Grove, the extraordinary turn of events in the lives of Jake, Elizabeth, and Dr. Lewis quickly became the talk of the town, inspiring all who heard about it. Their reunion story not only reignited faith in the possibility of happy endings, but also served as a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the ability to overcome adversity. The transformation that music had sparked in their lives became a source of inspiration, showing that art has the power not only to heal and unite, but also to pave the way for surprising discoveries and unexpected joys. Elizabeth, whose life had been defined by a series of sacrifices and challenges, found in music a renewed source of joy and expression. The reunion with her long-lost brother, Dr. Lewis, and the ongoing support of her son, Jake, enriched her musical experience, turning it into an even stronger bond between them. On quiet nights, the home of the three resonated with the melodies Elizabeth played on the piano, now an instrument of family unity rather than a symbol of deferred dreams. "This music," Elizabeth said one evening as the soft notes filled the room, "is the sound of our new beginning. Each note is a step in our journey together." Jake, in turn, absorbed every lesson and every story shared through music and conversations with his mother and his newly discovered uncle. His curiosity and thirst for knowledge found a new focus, not only in books and school, but also in personal stories and experiences that his expanded family had to offer. "I never imagined our family could grow like this," he expressed one evening, a smile of contentment lighting up his face. "Every story you all share is like a new chapter of the most amazing book I've ever read." Dr. Lewis, whose quest for connection and meaning had led him back to his sister and the nephew he never knew he had, found in Cedar Grove not only an end to his search, but also a new purpose. Medicine had always been his passion, but music and family brought a new dimension to his life. "I spent so much time searching for something I didn't even know I was missing," he reflected, grateful. "Now with you all, I feel like I've found not only my family, but also a part of myself that was dormant." Together, they built a life rich in memories and dreams for the future, each shared moment a note in a symphony of new beginnings. Music, the catalyst of their transformation, became a constant celebration of their unity and the limitless possibilities that awaited. Cedar Grove, witness to this incredible story of overcoming love and reunions, found in it a source of hope and proof that, no matter how winding life's paths may be, there is always room for the beauty of new beginnings and the magic of happy reunions. So what did you think of this incredible story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications to be alerted to each new video. Until next time.